Thank you very much for joining us.
Good to
Kalani.
be here.
This is exciting stuff for me.
Got my Britney Spears microphone on, you know. Thought I had to perform a song and dance.
We saw some dance in the video. I wonder if you might be...
My daughters asked me to stop doing it, so
all right.
Only on the football field, I promise.
I love it. Well, there's so many people probably in this crowd that know a lot about you, but I and I don't want to spend too much time going through bios, but I did want to give just a little bit and then dig into some stuff. A little football, but the spirit of this conference, of course, is about the human side of things and about the kind of other category. And, that's part of why we brought you up here, because of the way you live your life, frankly. And so with that, I'll just go quickly through. So he is the head coach of the BYU Cougar football team. This is his now 9th year, is that right? 8th year, and 29-9. First, those are the last 38 games. First Tongan head football coach in college football history. I actually met him back when I was playing baseball here, and he was a starting fullback, and so he was a 3-year starter, and then. A coaching career that's been phenomenal, obviously at BYU, but prior to that at some other schools, 10 years at University of Utah where they've had a lot of success. So let's get into it a little bit. Maybe before we get into some more of the human good stuff, I would love to hear, if I could just ask you, what's something about the program right now that you're just excited about?
I just like working with the boys and like interacting with the fans, and that's just college football fans from all over, so it's not just the BYU Cougar fans, but I get to, you mentioned I was at Utah, so I get to spend time with Utah fans, and I just love people that are passionate about sport and about teams, and so I'm really honored to be here. I mean, I grew up never thinking that this could be possible, and so I'm just trying to live it to the max every day.
Love it, man. Something kind of fun that found out from Chad Lewis the other day. You and some other coaches had a chance to go get to know and spend some time with Nike and with Phil Knight, founder Nike, author of Shoe Dog, pretty legendary guy. And what was that like? Just what was it like spending some time getting to know him?
Yeah, it was really cool. I mean, I think everybody knew that the movie was coming out, and then was able to spend some time with Kirby Smart and other coaches that are involved with Nike and spent some time with Phil Knight. But before I went on the trip, Phil Knight's assistant was emailing me and just saying, hey, just be ready to share some stories about LaVell Edwards. And I'm like, all right. And I said, well, what kind of stories? It's like, all kinds, because that's what Phil wants to hear about. And when I had an opportunity to sit next to Phil at dinner, and everything was like on purpose, deliberate. And so I met with him, and we had dinner and with the whole group, but he just wanted to hear stories about LaVell, and I was happy to share them. And
Give us one story you shared with Phil about LaVell.
Yeah, I mean, the last one I shared with him got him really excited and made him tear up. And I mentioned that, and I have my phone that I have. When I first got the job here, I shared with him a message that LaVell left me. And it was, we're on our way to a game, and I'm listening to my music, my playlist on the bus, and all of a sudden my phone just says voicemail. And I don't remember anyone calling during that time, so I just pushed play and had my headphones on. It was LaVell, and he just, 20-second message. Proud of you, really comfortable about where the program's going. Just keep doing it, keep smiling and have fun. And told me he loved me. And that was it. And but in the bus, that meant the world to me, because that's when we were actually getting ready to go play Toledo, and we're 1-3. And I'm first-year head coach. And I get this message, and it got me really emotional as we're getting off. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm about to do Cougar Walk. I got to stop crying. But it was really cool that he said that, and I don't know, it just built a lot of confidence in me that he wasn't worried about the record. He liked what he was seeing from his point of view on the program, and gave me a lot of confidence going in that season. I mean, in that game, and we ended up the season being 9-4. And after I finished the story, I played the voicemail for Phil so he could hear LaVell's voice. And
you kept it?
I still have it, yeah.
Wow.
And it was really cool because Phil was listening to it, and then I told him the situation that we were 1-3, and Phil said, that's my guy. I miss him. And so he got really emotional.
Because they knew each other pretty
well. Yeah,
well.
they're really good friends.
That's so cool.
And I was happy to do that, just to remember a wonderful man that helped change my life, that was a great mentor to me. And, all the times that I had with LaVell, it wasn't about football. It was always, he would challenge me in a lot of different things. And I remember him saying, if you're going to be a captain for me one day, then you need to be doing this and this. And I'm sitting there going, captain? Fullbacks don't become captains. That's like quarterback stuff, And this was my sophomore year. He was telling me this, and he wanted me to face challenges. And he's the one that, my freshman year we beat Notre Dame, and I had a pretty good game. And LaVell calls me in. His assistant Shirley calls me and says, "Hey, LaVell wants to meet with you." I'm like, "Okay, cool." He's going to praise me and tell me how great I am because Norm Chow didn't do it enough, So anyways, I sit there and I'm in the meeting, and he said, "Hey, he talks to me about family, and then he said, "You ever thought about serving a mission?" And I was like, "No, not really. I sang the songs growing up and all that stuff, but no, I want to play football." And he just said, I just think you'd be a great missionary. And I'm sitting there going, man, that's what this meeting's about, But it was kind of cool because after that, I couldn't stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
And 3 months later, I found myself in the MTC.
Where'd you serve?
I served in the Bay Area, Oakland. I'm old, so it's like 3 missions now. But back then, it was the Bay Area, Oakland, San Francisco mission, and I loved it. I loved every part of it.
I love it. We'll come back to LaVell in a minute. Let's talk if you don't mind. It would be fun to just, I think, for myself and for others to get to know Kalani's background a little bit more, the human side, the family side. And, we were talking earlier just about the different places you've lived growing up. And I'm going to mess this up, but, born in Tonga, but lived in North Shore, Hawaii, but St. Louis and Provo and Northern California. Tell me a little bit about that, and then, got to know your dad a minute and some of the adversity that you kind of came through, and when your mom left, and some of the stuff that you learned along the way, how that's kind of shaped you.
Yeah, there's a lot in that.
Yeah.
But I grew up. I have 2 hometowns. I call Laie, Hawaii hometown, and Provo, Utah. And I remember being out here, and I grew up all BYU because that's what. In Laie, everybody cheered for BYU back then. Our next door neighbor was Lake Hemuli and Hema Hemuli back then. So we cheered for the Red Raiders and BYU football, and that's just kind of how we rolled. My parents divorced, they separate, my mom leaves, and quick background, my mom left when I was 6, and I didn't see her again until I was 24. But my dad was finishing up school, and so me and my siblings split up and went different places. I moved with my grandpa in San Mateo, and it was kind of rough, We moved all different places, and we didn't have much to begin with, but we had family members that helped take care of us. And so I lived in different parts of the country, whether it's Provo, Salt Lake, Oakland, San Francisco, San Mateo, and Laie. And so then it wasn't until that 1984 year where my dad decides he's going to bring the siblings together, and he's just going to raise us by himself as a single father, and we lived out here, and that's my heart. My dad's my heart, So but even during this time, my life was still broken. It was in shambles still. I didn't understand. Those of you that know dealing with divorce, whether you're going through it or you have in the past, it's not an easy thing, especially for children. My dad never said anything negative about my mom.
It's amazing.
He's just not like that.
Yeah.
But we didn't have much, but I felt like a broken young man. I was 9 years old, and I just felt broken. I didn't have any friends. I was going to school out here. I was going to Cascade Elementary, and the only thing I had was BYU football, and they happened in 1984. They happened to be really good. And so this national championship team comes to our elementary school, and they say all the cool things. They give this presentation. I didn't have any friends. I didn't eat with people, and I didn't participate in recess. But I was so excited to see them, and I was hoping to get some things signed by the players. But they introduced, just like be a good kid, listen to your parents, watch out for strangers, stuff like that. And
right.
They're promoting the presidential fitness. You guys remember that?
Yeah, I do.
How many sit-ups you can do in a minute. I don't know how healthy that is for your back.
Sit and reach.
But how long you can hang from a bar.
It's
weird stuff. Like, is this really the fitness, and does the president know about all this? But anyways, I was struggling with everything other than these these guys were here, and they're national champs, and I was like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
And it was after they all went out to recess, and the whole school was playing four-square tetherball. They broke some tetherball stuff, and they're kicking the ball like crazy. And I was happy sitting on the side. I've told the story before. Some of you might have already heard it, but I was just content just sitting on the side watching these big men kick the ball so far, and I was enjoying it. And then one of the guys kept looking over at me, and he's like, hey, come. And I'm like, no, I'm good.
You said you were about 9 at the time?
Yeah, I was 9 years old. I was
Yeah.
like, no, I'm good. And stop looking at me. You know?
Yeah.
I'm the one supposed to be looking at you. And then he kept doing it. A couple minutes later, he'd look over, and then all of a sudden, he starts walking over towards me. I'm like, what is he doing? And I'm leaning against the wall, like, dude, I got to get out of here. And he comes and sits next to me, and he says, hey, what's your name? I say my name, and then he just talks to me. He asks me different questions, and I just nod my head yes and no, and I didn't know what to do. I couldn't believe he was doing this. And then he got up, and he said, hey, stand up. And I stood up and gave me a hug, and then he said, everything's going to be fine. And I've heard those words probably 1,000 times, but this is the first time I believed it. And yeah, so from that moment, I felt fixed. I knew that I was going to play football for BYU.
Yeah.
I knew that I was going to try to make people happy. And he told me God loves me and I love you. And I was like, man, that was amazing. And he left. I felt this great feeling. Yeah. And I was on my path to play football for BYU. So it changed everything for me, And decades later, I come up to him and I say, hey, you remember this at Cascade? Do you remember this happening? And he's like, not really.
Didn't really remember it.
And I'm like, dang it, they're not going to make a movie about this then. You know what I mean? You don't remember it, so. But why would he? Why would he remember it? It was an interaction with a stranger. He just saw someone was hurting and he wanted them to be involved. He went over and talked to him, and all he did was nod his head. But at the very end, told him that he loved him and that everything's going to be fine. Changed my life.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we get so caught up on looking in screens and we don't realize that the power we have to change someone's life in just a matter of seconds. It could be just a smile, a great conversation. Kindness is a superpower. And so you can imagine how I feel when I see our players doing things for others.
Yeah. Makes you proud.
Yeah, and I know we're supposed to win games and everything, but there's just some parts of my job that's just way more important. And the byproduct is that you win games and you have, but the success that I measure is things like that. It's way different for me.
That's super cool. I'm grateful you'd share that. I've talked to a few people, as we got ready for this thing, that know you, real well, and they've kind of said you're a bit of like this. You have this sixth sense or maybe superpower of like spotting somebody in this crowd or at some event that you're at that is hurting, that's got some kind of challenge, and kind of seeking them out and talking to them. I wonder how much of that comes from that just innately or through that experience that you had and trying to kind of pay it forward. Yeah. What would you say?
I mean, what a great compliment.
Yeah.
I walked up on people and asked them if they want a picture, and they're like, who are you? I'm like, all right, Jason Momoa, who do you think I am? But I just wanted to, I think sometimes people stare and I'm like, okay, it's either they're impressed by me or they know me or something, but I never want to leave it to chance that I could have interacted with someone.
Yep.
And so sometimes I spot somebody and they're just staring at me and wondering what I'm doing, in the Letterman's jacket when it's getting warm. Couldn't afford Letterman's jacket back in high school, so I sport one as much as possible now. No, but the concept of helping, that's and seeing somebody that's in need, I get that from my pops.
Yeah.
I get that from my dad, and pops is right here. And so that's my guy, So
give it up.
My guy Tom.
So before we came in here, we were talking in the other room about like raising kids and how hard it can be in today's environment and some of the challenges with it. And they were talking about, you were telling me a little bit about your culture and your family culture. and about how stories get told.
Yeah.
And about how your dad's been a part of that, and his dad, and so on and so forth. But how important have stories been, and is there a particular story that's meant something to you that you're willing to share?
Yeah, I mean, I'll share a lot. I mean, I already shared one that made me basically cry, but stories have always been, but we didn't have much. I think it's kind of interesting where we didn't have much, but my dad didn't hide it. He's like, this is what we're dealt with, and I remember being really young, and my dad said, we don't have much, but you have two choices. You can either choose to be happy or choose to be sad. And he's like, I choose to be happy. And we're like, yep, me too, let's do it. Try to do as much as we can. And even when I was growing up and I was feeling broken, whenever I was around my dad, he was always super happy and always smiling. And we've had some really cool experiences. And when you don't have much, you have stories, and you have history, and you have stories about where your name came from, or your family, and your heritage. And so my father would share these stories with us, and it was really cool, and then I just that's kind of how we grew up. But I watched, if I were to tell you stories about my dad, and I think we sit here and we talk about mentors, we talk about LaVell Edwards, and we talk about like Kyle Whittingham was a great mentor to me. I had some really cool mentors, and it's interesting because you can name drop a lot of people that you know, but I would have to say the best mentors I've ever had, and those are great mentors that help my profession, and they've done great things to help me as a person. They complement who I am and my identity. But the best mentors I've ever had is my father, and then my wife.
Yeah. And
so I would not be here if it weren't for those two. And the moment that I just decided I was going to be obedient to my dad. I was just going to do it. And I didn't make sense sometimes. And he's from the islands, and he doesn't understand what it's like to be in the mainland or in the States. But I read in Scripture, I mean, the times that real quick story. I watched, remember 10 Commandments with Charlton Heston?
Yeah.
That was like our Lord of the Rings movie, right, back then? the graphics were okay, but like back then it was pretty badass.
Parts to see.
Yeah. Well, I shouldn't say badass with Scripture. Anyways, it's in the Scripture, so I can say it. But the point is, like, in this, I watched it, like, it was really cool. It was like, they did Prince of Egypt, which is not even close to that.
My parents put that in front of me.
Yeah. So we watched it, and it was cool, but I was intrigued with the vulnerabilities and the weaknesses that Moses had, and how he had to rely on his brother, and how everyone kind of worked together. And I know he gets a lot of the credit for leading the children of Israel out of bondage, but it was really cool. But it made happen to me is, like, I tried to name the 10 Commandments, and I'm sitting there going, as a 15-year-old, going, I got like 5, like, well, there's no way. I know 13 articles of faith, but I don't know the commandments, and it's kind of weird. So I went and found a Bible, looked it up, and it was Exodus chapter 20, verse 12, that said, honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days will be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. And it hit me. I'm going to listen to my dad. I'm just going to obey him and just listen to him. I wrote a letter to my mom, told her how much I loved her, and how I long for her love and everything, but it's okay.
How old were you at this time?
I was 15, and I just listened, and everything started to fall into place. And so I was obedient to my father, but I watched him. That's a really cool story to tell about how I came to that conclusion, but I watched him when we were little, and how we, I'll tell you a quick story about my father. This is the man that raised me. We had, he struggled, so we had a lot of jobs, and he had a job that he came home, and sometimes we would go help him, and we would clean up this building, and try to help him a little bit. And he said, hey, I'm going to need your help, me and my siblings, tonight, because it's really bad. And we go in there, and this building's kind of trashed, offices trashed, and I'm like, what's going on? You guys have a party here? And it's kind of weird, but it was like this stuff was deliberately thrown all over the place. And my dad tells me, there's new ownership, and there's a bunch of layoffs. And so, it's our job to clean this up. And so I said, okay, let's go to work, and we played some music and tried to clean up. But as we were cleaning up every office that we went to, my dad would tell us stories about that person. And he would say, this person lives here and has this many kids, and he just like report like it was not even, he didn't even think about it. And he would say, like, this person likes volleyball, and this person likes the San Antonio Spurs. I remember that, and this person likes. So it was kind of interesting how we just listened to these stories. And then a few hours later, we cleaned the whole place up. And I'm walking out, I'm like, that was actually pretty cool. And as we go through, I said, Pops, I'm glad that at least you got to keep your job. And he said, oh, put out the keys, put it on the desk. He goes, that was Daddy's last day.
Wow.
So that guy lost his job, but he doesn't take anything for granted. And he chose to go clean that place up and allowed me to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And so that's the man who raised me. So you talk about super kind. There's a superpower that my dad has.
Yeah.
And so that's, yeah, thank you. He's getting really embarrassed right now, but yeah, so the mentoring, I went from, and my father, I try to listen and be obedient as I can, and I can't say it was exact, but I tried my best, and things just started to work out. And then when I met my wife and I got married, my dad said, now, she's the one. So you choose her. If I give you something and she gives you something, you choose her. And I said, okay. And away we went, and they seem to be very in line on a lot of different things. And it's interesting, but I think when people, and I've tried to do it different. I mean, we talked about, I try to do things on my own and try to make it work because I'm the man. I gotta find a way to make it work. I'm the one that has the training in all this. And even in my job, the times that I've really, really struggled is when I try to do it alone. And so when I revert back to my wife, there's like a lot of things that I would talk to her about and confide in her. And when I allowed her to be part of the business and part of my work and my employment, she's a superhero. Yeah. She knows everything about me.
What would you say you've learned? I mean, you said earlier that she's kind of one of your
I got
lesser-known mentors.
I'll give you another story about my wife, okay, so I can tell you. This is how badass my wife is, okay? So we both met at BYU. We're both BYU students.
She's from Florida.
Yeah, and so it took a lot of convincing, she's from Florida, for her to take a shot on me, you know what I mean? And but we create a life together. We have wonderful children. Timberly's her name.
The kids, yeah.
Yeah, Timberly, and then our daughters, Sky and Sadie, are 19 and 15. Then our son, KK, is 12. And then we have a baby who turned 9 months old today. Yeah, so wasn't planned, but it's okay. That's whatever I got to do, man. I was trying to convince her, let's get another one just in case, while we're at this age. But when I went into coaching and I was trying to do it all alone, I was trying to put in all the hours, I was trying to recruit, do everything and keep her out of it because I didn't want to bother her with it. Those are the times it was really difficult for me.
Yeah.
And I got this job, literally got this job because of her.
Why would you say that? Because
well, we had made the decision to go to Oregon State, and we put 10 years at Utah. We killed it there, and we just had this feeling to go to Oregon State, and just wanted me around a little bit more. And so we went there with Gary Anderson, and it was not a good year. And I mean, at the end of the year, I'm just like, man, I'm just venting to her. And she's like, well, I'm sorry, this is one of your worst years as a coach, but it was a great year for us as a family. And she was right. It was a great year for us. And but it was a phone call that I get from Tom Homo, and he says, hey, we'd like to interview you for this job, for the BYU job. Bronco had just left and went to Virginia. And I'm like, okay, well, I kind of had a bad attitude. I was like, why would they hire me? The timing doesn't work out. And I said this to my wife. I said, it seems like kind of a token interview. And my wife gets upset. She's like, there's nothing token about it. Because they were flying into, Tom and Brian were flying into Portland. And I was going to meet them at a steakhouse. I don't mind. I like steak, so that was good. But it just seemed kind of like a weird type of meeting, an interview. And it was going to be the next day at 6 p.m. And they called me at 6:17 p.m. the day before. And my wife was like, there's nothing token about it. You're going to get this job. Doesn't matter if they give you an hour, 2 hours, you're going to get it. And you're going to give everything you can because we love BYU. We want to show our gratitude to BYU. So if you give them all the information that you can to help the school, then maybe they can turn around and give it to the new head coach. And I'm sitting there going like, man, she's brilliant, but and it turned my whole demeanor around. I said, okay. And then she pulls out this folder and starts to drill me and ask me questions about, like she's Tom Homo. And I'm like, Tom's not going to ask that question. She's like, just answer. Like, all right. So I kind of played along, and we did that for hours, and it was so much fun. Wow. And then I'm driving up to Portland from Corvallis, which is a 2.5 hour, 3 hours of traffic, and I'm driving up there, and she's like, she tells me, you just got to end it with this. And I said, that sounds cheesy, but I'll kind of feel it out, right? Prayed, went into the meeting, killed it. The first question Tom asks was one I said he's not going to ask.
Pretty sure Tom and Brian are out here, brother.
Tom's here. Then I said, well, in my mind I thought, Tom emailed her the questions. There's no way that she's getting all these right. And so I think I'm slaying it. I'm feeling really good, confident. And at the end, my wife said, you have to say this. And I said, okay. So hours later, Tom says, is there anything you want to add? And I said, of course. I said, why didn't you fly me and Timberly out to Provo? You flew Kenny Matololo, who I love, and his wife Barb. You flew him out to Provo for the weekend to give him a chance to see Provo, see the campus, introduce him to BYU. Why didn't you do that for me and Timberly? And Tom says, well, we don't really need to because you and Timberly already know everything about BYU. You guys met there. You guys were the students there. You guys love BYU. And then I said, and that's why you're going to hire me to be the next head coach of BYU. All written by my wife, by the way. So, yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go, Timberly.
But I would say that sometimes we're looking for this big-time mentor, and it's staring us right in the face, literally. And for me, when things are difficult, I go to my wife, I go to my father, and I do appreciate all the mentors that have been along the way that have helped me. Kyle Whittingham, LaVell Edwards, all these other coaches that I've had. But those are my day ones, and they're the ones that actually elevate me and amplify my abilities. Amazing. They know my vulnerabilities and my weaknesses, but they also know my strengths. And so that's. Anyways, I probably talked too much. But
no, that was great. That said, I wonder if you would talk for a second about your time with. We talked a little bit about LaVell and Kyle Whittingham and your relationship with him and what you learned. You were there 10 years. You helped him win a whole bunch of bowl games. They've had a lot of success. Yeah, it's been really cool to watch. Like what. And if we have time, we'll talk about LaVell. Yeah, maybe a little more. But what did you learn, and what's he like?
So much about. I mean, my first meeting when I got hired by Kyle, Kyle said, "What do you want to do? What do you want to be doing in 5 years?" And I said, "Well, I want to be defensive coordinator." And he said, "What do you want to be doing in 10 years?" I said, "I want to be a head coach." And he's like, "Okay, let's get to work then." And he challenged me, and he always made it uncomfortable for me by questioning me on a lot of different things and giving me feedback. I mean, it was I don't mind being criticized, especially if it can help me. But I learned and grew quite a bit under his mentoring, and I because of that though, the 10 years I spent there, I met wonderful people. Yeah, just amazing people, and I mean, I just loved my time there. And so I have an older brother that played for the U, and so it was just nice to be there and be engaged with all the fans there, and have a great mentor like Kyle who taught me a lot.
What's like one, if you pick one, maybe two things you say, man, Kyle's got like a superpower here, and this is maybe one specific thing I learned from Kyle, would you say?
Yeah, it's his love for his family. So like I talk about my love for my father, Kyle has that with his father, Big Fred. And you can see it when he talks about his dad, he gets emotional. And so I can understand where he comes from when he's doing that. And so, but it's the connection that he had from his father, and that he's excited to extend that the legacy that his dad would want him to do. And he always tells me, take advantage of the time that you have with your father. His father's passed on, and I appreciate him taking care of my dad like he's his own family, And so the Whittinghams have been great to us. Utah's been great to us, and I because of that, our gratitude to them is always going to be high. And we happen to be rivals, but I think there's a fun way to do it. It's okay. Utah can let us win some more, and we'll be happy.
I love it. We're about out of time. I guess I just want to express on behalf of me and Casey and everybody here in the room, just want to thank you for coming in and taking some time with us and letting us dig into some of the stuff that's a little more personal and get to know you a little bit better, and appreciate it, my man.
Thank you. And just for everybody here, like I'll take the last 20 seconds.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you how you can look into yourselves and find the strengths that you can do miraculous things. I never thought that I'd be in this position one day, and then I've got to live it up. So a lot of you have tons of success, but you can definitely help others and make a difference in this world. We already know this world's got a lot of struggles, but if we all work on it together exponentially, we can make a change, and we can definitely make this world a better place. So thank you very much.
Love it. Thanks a lot.